Okay, Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. So today, inshallah, the focus of what we'll be talking about are essentially scenarios and questions that come about regarding specific scenarios where, clarification on it would be pretty nice. Would be nice to have prior to finding ourselves in those positions, due to the understandable conclusion, which is that when people like you and I, when we start studying, and when we start trying to, prepare for Hajj and everything that comes with it, then oftentimes you may see contradict or hear of contradictory statements. So we just wanted to take a moment and dedicate a session to kind of go and maneuver those situations that may come up often, and kind of set the tone when it comes to the rulings with respect to it. And so we just titled this, common misconceptions about Hajj. And so we'll discuss different scenarios and talk about what's allowed, what's not allowed, inshallah. And then, of course, as always, we'll have time for questions, inshallah. And yes, is there anyone you want to add anything?
I think Sheikh has hit the nail on its head, alhamdulillah. Just to add, I think for folks who this is your first time going on Hajj, we've heard so much about what it's going to be like, and sometimes people tell us different advice and different rulings. And so, again, like Sheikh said, a lot of this is just because sometimes what we've heard might not align with what's actually, going to be the case or what's true. And so we want to make sure that we dispel any sort of misconceptions that might arise.
All right, let's get started. Okay, so first and foremost, we have the ihram, and usually the questions come about just because it's a completely different state of being, obviously spiritually, but for our focus currently, it's more so the physical nature, which people get a bit stuck on, essentially. So let's go over these and then we'll talk about it as a whole. So one who's in ihram may change their clothing, one who's in ihram may shower, may touch their own skin, may use a blanket, may wear sunglasses, and this is across the board. And then you have women who may wear colors other than white, and then making a mistake in the ihram does not cause the ihram to break. However, it does bring about a penalty. So let's talk about them more specifically. The idea is, first of all, let's make sure we understand a base concept, which is the concept of ihram as a whole. It comes under like the wisdoms behind it and the reasonings as to why, we abide by it, which is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He loves to see His servant, male or female, male and female, to abide by the restrictions that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put place solely for His purpose. And you always see in a hadith related to Jumu'ah, for example, or Eid, for example, anytime you have a situation where there are a lot of people that are going to be there, you're going to a communal event, then the advice is always make sure you smell nice, because the idea is that you don't want to be a burden upon anybody around you. And a person who goes to a place where there are hundreds or thousands of millions of people, the idea is that you want to make sure that you bring about, you don't, contribute with your own, your own, natural smell of the body, essentially. Rather, you take the means of itar or some sort of fragrance, just so that you're not a burden whatsoever. So that's the base, that's the norm. When it comes to Umrah and Hajj and things of the sort, when a person goes into a state of Ihram, then in those situations where you're guaranteed to be around thousands, if hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people anytime you go, it changes. The ruling changes because, and just by the change in ruling, the change in ruling rather should also bring about a massive change in perspective, which is that we're not going by the norm anymore. We're not here so that we make it easy. We're not here like in Hajj or Umrah to make it easy upon people. Rather, we're here just solely for the purpose of abiding by whatever it is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us to abide by. And so in those situations, in the situation of, or in this, in the, in the, I guess the situation or the scenario of Ihram, each and every single person, they put to rest any sort of feeling that, or any sort of action that would stem from the feeling of, oh, I need to make sure that I'm presentable. Because now when it comes to Hajj, now when it comes to Umrah and a person is in the state of Ihram, we are meant to be presentable in the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to be presentable. And it's not about putting on itar or cologne or perfume or anything of that sort, making sure that your beard is lined up, making sure that your haircut is fresh or whatever it is really nice and well kept. it's not like that anymore because now we're basing how we're supposed to be on how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to be. So when it comes to all of now, we mentioned all that so that we can quickly discuss all of these products, right? We have, and of course, we're going with the understanding that all of them should be scent free and uns fragrant fragrance free and unscented. You have your you have your sunscreen, you have your lotions, you have your your toothpaste, you have your deodorants and colognes and wipes and all and hand sanitizers and everything in the middle and outside of what we just spoke about. So let's look at it quickly from the lens of the default or what's required behind the ihram as a whole, or what's not necessarily required but requested behind the ihram as a whole. The idea is based on even clear hadith that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves to see like kullu ash'ath aghbar. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves to see us, people like you and I, male and female. We've exerted ourselves by walking in such an environment, in such a climate, in such an environment, amongst such people. Everybody as a whole, the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a whole from all over the world literally is going to be there. And so we just want to present ourselves in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as how He wants us to present ourselves. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to show the state of a person who is a weary, tired traveler, who has reached the door of the first door. Think of it like an oasis. You're in a desert, you don't expect anything. You're tired, you're traveling, you're traveling, you're traveling. Now imagine you come across a lush area, somebody's living there, you just knock on the door. How desperate will you look? That's essentially the idea behind our presence in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We are those desperate people. We are those people who have, taken upon ourselves the journey to be here. And the entire purpose of the journey is to knock on the door of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and essentially show ourselves in this desperate state. So of course, spiritually, we're utterly desperate. We have nothing but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But we also want to show that physically as well. And we understand that from the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and how he would make dua and how he would present himself. How would it be? Would his, shoulders be out, chest out, or would it be much more of a humble position that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would adopt? And the latter is essentially what would happen, and that's something that we want to act upon as well. So, in light of all of that, that was basically an introduction to this. We'll just go over these quickly. So, one who is in ihram may change their clothing. The idea is, again, you may think that, okay, I have one piece of ihram, and that's the only thing that should stick to my body for as long as I'm in that period of ihram. But no, it's completely allowed to change, of course, especially after like the first or the second day. Just the heat of the sun itself brings about a smell, and we're not trying. So the idea is for anything, anything product related. We can just keep this in mind. We are allowed to use things to remove the odor, but not anything that would, we don't want to substitute the odor with a good smell, if that makes sense. You're allowed to remove it. Go ahead, remove it if you have unscented or fragrance-free wipes. So all that's going to do is it's not going to bring about a new smell or a fresh smell or like, whatever these scents are, like a flower or, new laundry smell, whatever it is. Obviously, we're not allowed to use those. But when it comes to just wiping it away to remove the odor, but not replace it with anything which is good, good in the sense that it smells nice and it's pleasant to the smell, then that would be something which is okay, generally speaking. One who's in ihram this leads us to the second point. One who is in ihram may shower. It's completely okay to just put some water over your head. There's no problem in there whatsoever. And then if people do have the people, there will be people who bring shampoos and soaps and things of this sort that are unscented. And then technically speaking, the usage of it would be okay as long as those conditions are met. The fact that it's just something which is fragrance free. And also just a side note, I think I'm spending too much time on this slide, but we'll move on quickly. Side note, when it comes to all of these, like the bathroom setting or the shower setting, just make sure that you're hyper aware, extremely or over aware when it comes to, scrubbing yourself as how you would normally do, or scrubbing your hair as how one would normally do if you're in the comfort of your own home. Just when it comes to when you try to, be as clean as you can, even within the bounds, then you oftentimes you don't really you're not necessarily hyper aware in the moment, and that's expected because that's just not the norm. That's not your habit. Okay, may touch their own skin. Of course, just make sure that even if there's an itch, try to, instead of like, going at it in terms of scratching it, maybe perhaps dabbing it or putting some pressure on it would be more beneficial. One who's in ihram may use a blanket. The reason as to why this may come into mind that it may not be permissible is because, again, well, I'm not supposed to cover my head. I'm not supposed to do this. I'm not supposed to do that. Again, when it comes to the ihram, especially for men, it's an un even if it's stitched, it's something which doesn't conform to the shape of your body. So it's still going to be the same thing. The ruling of the blanket would be the same, which is that it would be permissible, just as how wearing one's ihram is permissible as well. And in that, if the feet get covered, it's okay as well. One who's in ihram may wear sunglasses. Again, this is perhaps due to we oftentimes think of it too hard. As a man, I'm not supposed to cover my head, let's say. So how about putting anything on my face? And for women, we also mentioned that when it comes to like wearing a niqab, a different sort of methodology would need to be embraced to essentially carry out the same purpose. But the only problem with the niqab is that it would be face fitting. So then you drop something on from the top. So sunglasses is not like that in the sense that your eyes are allowed to be covered. It's not something which must be uncovered, and it's not something that if you wore something that fits to the form of the eyes, like as how all glasses do, they would not nullify anything whatsoever, would not incur any penalty. So women may wear colors other than white. Um, well, the idea is that the guys are all wearing white, so how about women? Do they have to wear black specifically or anything of that sort? That's not the case. So, Rahima, feel free to hop in. I'm taking all your screen time away. Just the last point really quickly, and I'll turn it over to you. Making a mistake in the ihram does not cause the ihram to break. Look, when it comes to these terminologies, breaking and penalty and all of these different things, you need to be extremely wary. It's pretty hard to break to break it, meaning to find yourself out of the state of it is a pretty difficult thing to do. It's very intentful. It's usually done intentionally. So don't freak out immediately. You always have us, inshallah, for support anytime you guys have any questions. But when we say that somebody's ihram was broken, that's a massive thing to say, or even think. If you yourself are just there, you can't get a hold of any of us, but Shaitan has just been working on you all day, and he said you're not in ihram anymore. You're not in ihram. Just put that to the side. Don't let that be your basic thought. Chances are extremely high, like almost like 99% sure that that's not going to be the case, especially if they're questioning it. Sorry, Rima, go ahead.
No, not at all. I'm so glad Sheikh went through all of that. I think the only things I'd like to supplement or caveat here is I know like p people usually get very wary of going for a shower or changing clothes and things like that. And as Sheikh mentioned, like you can do anything to remove the smell. In addition, like those who are traveling, to a Makkah first package and are putting their ihram on in the plane, or even those who are coming, through land through Medina, but in that travel, a lot of the times during travel, you face impurities, najasa in the plane, you're using the bathroom, things like that. So it's almost nicer to, come in and take that shower, and feel clean, so long as, like Sheikh mentioned, you're not rubbing at the skin, or, for the sisters, being really careful not to break our hair in the shower, things like that. But other than that, inshallah, all of these things are things that, are allowed and don't break the ihram. So just to add exactly what Sheikh said, like just because you did something that goes against the rulings of ihram does not mean that you're out of the state of ihram. You need to continue keeping on, and of course, there's a penalty that will occur. I think like the best kind of analogy I could give here is just thinking about when you're fasting, right? Just because you accidentally ate something while fasting doesn't mean your fast is broken, right? You would continue on with your fast. Here too, if you do something, let's say you put on a perfume or something like that, your ihram is not broken, does not mean that you're out of the state of ihram. You need to continue on with the state of ihram until you finish your tawaf, until you finished your udhiyah, your sacrifice is done. But what will happen is it'll incur some form of penalty, and of course that's what the shuyukh are for. You go to them, you explain the situation, and they can tell you exactly what's owed. Is it an animal, a sacrificial animal? Is it the smaller animal, the bigger animal? Maybe it's just some fidya, some small amount of charity, depending on the situation. And
Awesome.
yeah, and I believe from here we just have some common misconceptions and look their clarifications.
Okay, awesome. Just one thing, she keeps saying you can ask the shield. She's part of that, all right? So make sure you guys are extremely comfortable in asking her any questions. She studies, she's an alima, she's a sheikha as well, so feel extremely comfortable. She'll never say it, but we got to take the load off of ourselves, and there's no load, but I'm still gonna, keep her as a reference, inshallah, for you guys. So just make sure that if you guys do have any questions, particularly the sisters, you have extremely qualified people, and take advantage of it because it really isn't that common. Let's keep it going. So fasting on the day of Arafah. A misconception in the sense that people may think of it to be more virtuous. So Hajjaj should fast on the day of Arafah. Now full transparency, there are some schools who do say that it is better to fast on the day of Arafah. But they're talking that we're the schools look at it from a very technical standpoint that anybody who fasts with the assumption that their fasting does not change the way they would have done anything. That's not the case for people like you and I. If we fast, we're going to feel the fatigue just by walking itself. And then once we get there, how many hours are we actually going to be able to bear without the help of cold water and snacks and things of the sort? It becomes next to impossible that a person who fasts would like if I were to go there not fasting and then go there later fasting, and the idea is that both days or both times my output would be the exact same. That's completely absurd, essentially, to think about or to assume just because of how difficult it's going to be. So, if we may hear that it's virtuous to fast, sure, of course, but again, to fast only if you would have done exactly the same amount had you not fasted. Which how are you going to know? If for many of us, if this is our first time and we're going in with the assumption based on what we talked about last time that this is my first and my only time, then the idea is that I want to exert myself as much as possible. And if you go in from the get-go, from the beginning, fasting, then the possible amount of output that you can put out is already limited from the beginning, prior to you even starting. So, starting the day off or starting the entire journey of Hajj off. So the idea is that, keep it in moderation, basically. You're going to be exerting yourself physically and spiritually as well, in all senses already. So you don't want to bring about, and these are things which are fard, like these are things which you have to do. These are things Al-Hajj Arafah, as you have heard multiple times, that this is the day where you have to exert yourself in every sense of the word. And so limiting yourself or even assuming or even imagining that you'd be limited by doing a nafil a voluntary act such as fasting on that day, then of course, categorically it's better not to do so. Sorry, you want to add
Yeah,
anything?
I would just add in here, like, as Sheikh mentioned, there's different rulings based on the different schools of thought. Some will encourage it, but I will categorically recommend all Hajjaj not to fast on the day of Arafah. And this is coming directly from my own experience. Alhamdulillah, I've made Hajj multiple times, and I cannot think of a single year in which I was not either sick or I did not pass out on the day of Arafah. So despite the fact that I had air-conditioned tents and I was not fasting. So, no, we were drinking good, like cold water and we had ice cream and everything. And still, Hajj is just so, so physically demanding, that subhanAllah, you will find yourself falling ill, even though we're doing all these things to get ready. You will find yourself, either falling ill, may Allah keep everyone safe and healthy, or you will find that, you're lacking in energy, things like that. Even on the day of Arafah, like you're going to have times where you're like, okay, I'm going to stand and make dua. Okay, now I'm going to sit and make dua. Then I'm going to lie down and make dua, just because it's just such a physically intense journey. So I definitely would not recommend anyone to fast. Again, it's going to be in the month of June, so one of the longest fasts of the year as well. It's going to be extremely hot. So even though we have air-conditioned tents and everything, it's just like a super long day for you as a Haji. Like you're doing movement from Mina to Arafah, and then the Arafat we're gonna have, what's it called? We're going to be there till Maghrib time, things like that. So it's not the best idea. And then also just thinking about breaking fast, it's going to be very tough because that's the time we're doing movement, right? Maghrib time is when we're moving to Muzdalifah. So it's definitely not recommended for you to fast because it's going to harm your ability to do the point of Hajj, which is make dua at Arafah. Yeah.
Awesome. Jazakallah khair. Do you want to start the next one so I can just cover up for you? We'll flip it around if you want.
Absolutely. All right, so a common misconception, which is one that I believe for many years, is that one who is in ihram may not clip his or own hair to get out of ihram. So what that would mean is like if we finish doing Umrah, for example, I would have send my brother to go to the barber shop. He would get, his head shaved and get out of the state of ihram, and then he would come back with scissors and, clip our hair to get us out of the state of ihram. But the truth is, that was me flipping it to you, Sheikh.
Oh, my bad. I didn't pick that up. Yeah, the idea is that of course like that's just a lot of so many more processes just to get to the same result. And at that point, that's the next step that even if you think about it like logically and rationally, that's the next step that would take you out of at least one aspect of ihram. And so for you to just do that by yourself, that would be completely okay to do so. because that is the next thing that's supposed to happen. Prior to that, had you touched your hair or anything of that sort, then yeah, that's a penalty on your own end because you as a whole, you yourself are not able to, initiate the process of cutting the hair, you by yourself or seeking anybody else's help. However, when it comes to this stage and when it comes to this stage specifically, then yeah, it's completely permissible for a person to then cut their own hair and of course especially uh primarily for women, and it makes it easier so that you can just go to the side or you can just go to your own rooms and cut it without worrying about anybody seeing it, anybody basically uncovering in front of people or where there may be people. But for the men as well, the lines are humongous. The lines are so extremely long. Of course, generally the idea is that you're going to get a cut from a person anyways, but let's just say I felt like doing it myself just to save some time. I'm completely allowed to do so. You just want to make sure you're extremely careful. The barbers essentially know that the ease with the barbers is that they know how to go about doing so just because they do cut like, at least thousands of heads a day for the men I'm talking about specifically. So they have their products and they have their way to go about doing so that nobody gets, I guess, let me rephrase that, just so that you get as least amount of cuts as possible. With the sheer volume of people coming in their seats, then, when it comes to Sabr, you'll probably see it there a little bit. But just generally as a whole, yeah, just to conclude this point, I think it's pretty straightforward. This is the time where you're supposed to, or you're allowed to, you're supposed to cut your hair, and underneath that, you're allowed to do it yourself. You don't have to wait for anybody specifically.
Yeah, sorry, not to add on too much, but I think this really is more effective for the sisters than the brothers because, as Sheikh mentioned, like it's for the brothers, it's a lot more accessible to go to the barber and get it done, whereas for sisters, we don't have, you know, these like dressing salons or we're supposed to go to get our hair clipped. It's mostly just sisters will be doing it for each other. You can do it for yourself, things like that. So it's definitely easier when you have your own pair of scissors and can do it for yourself.
Awesome. I think we have one more. So you want to start off?
Sure. Okay, so the misconception here is that one must perform the Tawaf al-Ziyarah, the main for Tawaf of Hajj, on the 10th of Dhul Hijjah, right? So whenever we go through the 5 days of Hajj, we always explain on the 10th of Dhul Hijjah, okay, you're going to be, doing your, well, waking up in Muzdalifah, you're going to do your stoning, you're going to have your udhiyah, and then you're going to go make Tawaf. But you can actually do Tawaf. That's me flipping it to you, Sheikh.
You can actually do it on either the 10th or the 11th or the 12th. And so, based on, of course, everybody wants to do it as soon as possible to get out of the state of the smaller state of Ihram, and that makes sense. But also keeping in mind the variables, which are the people, the exhaustion, the time, of day and the journey itself and the group as a whole, the leaders. There's just so many things to keep in mind where it may be better to delay it a day or delay it to nighttime of that same day or the morning of the day or earlier hours of the day after. But and if that happens, don't feel like, man, these people, this group is just delaying us for no reason, or we missed the reward, or we did this, or we did that. Don't think all of these negative thoughts. It's just an opportunity for Shaitan to sway the way we think or bring about some negative feelings because he knows that we're coming to an end of the greatest monetary and physical ibadah that we could possibly ever do. So don't think this way whatsoever. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So first of all, when we think about Hajj and we think about all of its rulings you guys have seen in all of these different webinars that have been happening and are continuing to occur, you may feel overwhelmed. Man, there's just so much. There's no way I'm not gonna mess up. But when it comes to the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, when Sahaba radiallahu anhum are asking him, hey, what about this? I messed up. What about this? I messed up. The Prophet ﷺ, you see, with respect to Hajj specifically, he has a very like forgiving sort of attitude. Like, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Not of course related to anything which is like the pillar from the pillars of Hajj, but those things which are essentially attached to it or connected to it, tied into Hajj. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is very, and of course Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is very forgiving when it comes to it, and it gives us a lot of time to carry things out, and a ton of wisdom behind it that inshallah we'll see once we get there. You'll actually see that, man, there's subhanallah so much wisdom in granting us the instead of a set time or a set period. rather than giving us a set period, he has given us, what's it called, parameters and boundaries essentially, or like a start and finish time between which we can do it at any moment. So these are just some things that, so for example, Rami as well, when it comes to, it's not really mentioned here, but when it comes to the Rami or stoning the Jamarat on the first day, for example, everybody's going to want to go right away. And of course, sure, we understand that it's a good thing and it's better perhaps. But then also keep in mind the hour of the day, the amount of people, the walking and the groups, and are you just going to be a lone soldier or go by yourself, or would you rather stick with the group for support and for guidance and things, support more than anything else. But anyways, for whatever reason, we just want to make sure and ensure that whatever it is that we're doing it in the in the best manner that we can possibly do it in. And so if we find that doing it in the morning, oh, I didn't sleep enough last night, perhaps, or I'm just extremely tired, or something. All of these things are very, very normal. Don't think that the moment we go there, we're going to become superhuman and everything is going to be easy for us. If anything, it just becomes a bit more difficult, just at least a slight amount. It's just a little bit more difficult. So even when it comes to those ibadat, those other things, and you find that there is some aspect of delay with respect to it, it's never going to be such a delay which is not allowed in Deen, first and foremost. Secondly, it won't be a delay just because. It'll always be for, perhaps reasons on the back end. We just want to make sure we, go on a route which is the most comfortable for the Hajjaj as a whole. There are always going to be these different reasons. So, of course, the idea is that we try to stick with the group as much as possible, inshallah. And so if that happens, or if that happens where we have to delay things or for whatever reason, then just understand that it doesn't immediately necessitate that, oh man, this person is messing up my Hajj or something of that sort is occurring. It's all it's all part of the plan. It's all okay. It's all something which is allowed and permissible. Go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, and just to add, I think Sheikh beautifully brought up, that those scenarios, and I just wanted to give like perhaps a more tangible example of exactly what he's mentioned. So just like especially with the Rami, the stoning, right? Last year and inshallah it'll be the same this year, but we would have the groups that are going at different times. Different, shuyukh would take them, maybe somebody's taking 11 o'clock, one's taking at 12, one's taking at 1, whatever, they're staggered. And it had been announced, okay, there's going to be a group that's going, and they were going just in time so that they would make it to the stoning for after Zawal, and they'd be able to get the stoning done in that timing, right? Of course, this was super popular because everyone is like, oh, we want to do it in the Masnoon time. We want to do it in the time which is from the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. However, a situation arose where because of the extreme heat, mind you, in those days, it was about 120 degrees Fahrenheit, because of the extreme heat, right, and the fact that you're going to be walking in under that sun, the government had put down roadblocks, right? They had asked everyone to stay in their tents in Mina in the air conditioning, and they said we are going to block off the roads to Jamarat, stay where you are, and as the temperature comes down, we'll open up the roadblocks, right? This was announced, it came out on all of our phones and everything, and we knew that. So in Alhamdulillah, we went ahead and said, okay, well, the roads are blocked. We are not going to go forward with the group. As the temperature comes down and as we get closer to Asr time, they're going to open up the roads and then we'll go ahead, regroup, and go from there. There were those folks who were like, okay, great, let's stay in the air conditioning. Definitely my recommendation. And then those who said, no, we really want to make sure that we hit that Masnoon time and we don't want to miss it. We don't know what's going to happen if the roads open in time, if they don't open in time, whatever the case is. And so they went ahead. And I'm sure there was people amongst, those who were walking who probably didn't get the notification, didn't hear this news, whatever the case is. But what that ended up causing is that when you get to the main road where you're walking to Jamarat and there's a roadblock, there's just so many hundreds of people were standing there trying to get through, not knowing that at the front there's, barricades been put up. And that just caused them all so much, taklif, so much hardship and dehydration that day, right? So sometimes it's way to do it. But you also have to take into consideration that if there's a rule that's coming from, you know, higher up, that there's a hikmah or a wisdom that's not just for one person, but for the whole group, the whole millions of people who are going on Hajj. And to accommodate all of those millions, we have to be willing to, be more flex on the 10th. Expecting that they might be getting their period, you go right ahead, don't wait. But for everyone else, it's just as rewarding to go on the 11th or the 12th, right? Or to go at nighttime rather than doing it in the daytime. There's going to be rush whichever time you go. Of course, during the day, there tends to be a slightly less rush because people prefer to do it at night when it's not as hot. But in any case, there's going to be rush. So look at your own situation, see, okay, how am I feeling? Make sure that you're feeling 100%. If you need to take the night of the 10th, the following, before the 11th to rest up and then go on the 11th, that's fine as well. There will be, group leaders staggered and going on each day, so you can go with them as well. But definitely, 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 what we're reading in the books and is, the absolute best gold standard. We have to understand that that comes with some sort of caveats where things yes, there's a gold standard and then there's what's allowed. And we have to sometimes be okay to take the rukhsa, the permission that Allah has given us as a gift to us, right? To make it easier and to not put our body in harm's way.
Yeah, it's obligatory, it's completely fard to take care of your own self. And catching these ibadat at their times is, as we mentioned, sunnah. So even like at best it's sunnah. So even when it comes to looking at these things just purely on a basis of like their categorization, then without a doubt the priority goes to your own self, taking care of your own self. So the example scenario that you mentioned about the barricades, them putting the barricades down, that doesn't give room for us to then get in their faces and teach them about the sunnah or something of that sort. Rather to take a step back and to take care of your own self. And in that would definitely be more reward for making it easier for the people who are facilitating us to be there, making their jobs just that much more easier, by not resisting or by not, causing a scene or anything of that sort. So, yeah, should I move on?
Inshallah.
Oh, thanks, guys. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask.